The Star Union Citadel floated silently in the blackness of space, a massive structure of steel and light that housed representatives from hundreds of species. It was a place of learning, diplomacy, and security, and it held secrets that no one outside the Union could imagine. Commander Ryla walked along the polished corridors, her steps echoing softly, her mind full of concern. She had filed reports before, but none like this. She had seen something unusual, something she could not explain. The human assigned to the Citadel, Evan Hale, had arrived just 3 days ago. On the surface, he seemed ordinary. He was of average height with brown hair and steady eyes. He walked calmly, spoke politely, and smiled when appropriate. To most people, he appeared harmless, even weak. Many of the other species laughed quietly at the idea that a human could be dangerous. But Ryla was not like most. She had seen strength in subtle forms, and she had a feeling that humans, especially this one, were not to be underestimated. Her first warning had come during the unloading of cargo from the docking bay. A massive crate, far heavier than any human should lift, had tipped and blocked a doorway. Without hesitation, Evan had stepped forward and lifted it alone, moving it aside with ease. The other species stared in disbelief. Ryla's sensors confirmed it. The crate weighed over 3 times what a normal human could carry. "Commander Ryla," an officer had said, raising an antennaed head, "surely you exaggerate. Humans are fragile. Look at him. He is smiling like this is nothing." "I am not exaggerating," Ryla replied firmly. "Observe him. I will not be wrong." She began her surveillance carefully. She did not want to appear paranoid, but every movement of Evans seemed to confirm her suspicions. His reflexes were lightning fast, his focus unwavering. When a maintenance drone malfunctioned, spinning dangerously toward a group of junior engineers, Evan had stepped forward. In one fluid motion, he caught the drone mid-air, shutting it down with his bare hands. The engineers were safe, and Evan's face showed no stress. The other officers shrugged and returned to their duties, some whispering that Ryla was overreacting. But she knew better. During the following days, Ryla watched Evan as he moved through the Citadel. He never sought conflict, never bragged, and avoided fights. Yet his presence alone seemed to command attention. He noticed small things others missed: structural weaknesses in cargo supports, slight changes in energy readings, irregularities in communication lines. Every time Ryla thought she understood him, he did something new, something that challenged her expectations. She recorded every instance in her log, detailing them with precision. Yet no one seemed to care. To the Citadel's leadership, humans were curiosities, polite and cooperative, but fundamentally weak. Ryla knew she had to prove them wrong. The first real test came unexpectedly. An alert sounded through the station. An unknown fleet had entered the sector. Sensors picked up multiple large ships moving at high speed. The station went on high alert. The leadership calmly began standard defensive procedures, confident they could handle any threat. Ryla's eyes, however, stayed on Evan. She followed him as he moved toward the tactical station. To her surprise, he did not panic or hesitate. He studied the star maps and ship positions with an intensity that made even the senior officers pause. His fingers moved across the holographic controls, rearranging positions and predicting possible enemy moves. "Commander Ryla," Evan said calmly, "if we position the defense drones here, we can channel their ships into a narrow passage. They will have no room to maneuver. If we reinforce these sectors first, we can reduce casualties." The officers blinked. Predictions and strategies like this required experience, training, and often intuition honed over decades. Humans were not supposed to have that. Yet Evan's plan made sense. It worked on the holographic simulation they ran in minutes. Ryla felt a mixture of fear and awe. She had not been wrong. This human was extraordinary. But what scared her most was not his skill. It was his instinct, his ability to think, act and protect without hesitation. The first attack came hours later. The fleet's ships opened fire, targeting the outer sections of the citadel. Explosions rocked the station, and alarms blared. In the chaos, a section of the station's reactor corridor collapsed, trapping several engineers inside. Panic spread among the crew, and fear painted the faces of officers who had laughed at Ryla's warnings just hours ago. Without waiting for orders, Evan ran toward the danger. Ryla followed, her heart racing. She had expected him to be brave, but not this, almost reckless. He reached the collapsed section, analyzing the situation in a glance. With strength that belied his human frame, he lifted the debris blocking the entrance, allowing the engineers to escape. Ryla recorded everything silently. When they returned to the command center, the other officers were in shock. "I told you the human was dangerous," Ryla said, her voice steady. "And now you see why." The council argued. "Dangerous? He saved lives. Being brave is not the same as being a threat." Ryla clenched her fists, but did not argue further. She knew the truth. Humans were dangerous, yes, but in ways the others could not yet understand. Their strength was not always physical. It was instinct, resilience, and courage under pressure. Humans adapted, survived, and acted in ways that seemed impossible to other species. Evan was living proof. That evening, as the citadel's lights dimmed and the stars outside shimmered, Ryla found herself standing alone near the observation deck. Evan was there too, gazing out at the endless darkness. He said nothing, but she noticed a quiet intensity in his posture. "You are different," she said softly, not knowing if he could hear her. "I do not understand all of it yet, but I see that you are not like the rest of us." Evan turned to her, calm and measured. "I am human. We survive. We protect. That is all I know." Ryla nodded, sensing that this was only the beginning. There would be tests ahead, bigger and deadlier than anything the Citadel had ever faced. She would have to watch him closely. The human was dangerous, yes, but not in the way anyone expected. He was dangerous because he refused to fail, because he refused to let others be harmed. The next days passed with tense anticipation. Reports of the pirate fleet's movements reached the Citadel regularly, and Ryla studied Evan's behavior. He observed, learned, and suggested small changes that improved efficiency. He seemed almost to understand the station itself, predicting equipment failures and optimizing procedures with remarkable intuition. Other species continued to dismiss him, joking quietly about human fragility, but Ryla's respect and her fear grew. She began to wonder if humans were not simply another species, but a species designed to survive against impossible odds. And then, late one night, the Citadel's sensors detected an anomaly. A ship had slipped past the patrol drones moving toward the docking bay. It was small, fast, and dangerous. While the officers debated what to do, Evan acted. He reached the security controls and directed the bay shields to close faster than protocol allowed. The intruding ship tried to ram the station but failed, bouncing harmlessly away. Ryla's eyes widened. Every officer had been trained to react, to follow procedure. Evan had reacted instinctively, predicting the outcome perfectly. He had no fear, no hesitation, only precise action. Later, as the crew calmed and the threat passed, Ryla reported her observations again. The council listened politely, but their doubts remained. Humans were new, untested in real space warfare. They did not believe a single human could make such a difference. Ryla, however, could not unsee what she had witnessed. Humans were dangerous, yes, but their danger came from an unwavering courage, quick thinking, and a resilience that other species simply did not have. Evan Hale was living proof, and soon the entire Citadel would see it. As the stars stretched endlessly outside, Ryla realized that she had two choices: continue watching him with suspicion, or learn from him and prepare for what was coming. She chose the latter. The human had already proven himself. And in the days ahead, Ryla would see just how dangerous he could be, not for the Citadel, but for anyone who threatened it. And somewhere deep inside, she felt a thrill, a mix of fear and respect. Humans were unpredictable, untested, and potentially unstoppable. She had only just begun to understand the truth. The Citadel hummed with quiet energy in the hours after the minor attack. Officers checked systems, repaired damage, and recalibrated sensors. But a nervous tension lingered in the air. Commander Ryla walked the corridors, her mind restless. She could not shake the feeling that the true test of the human was still ahead. Evan Hale moved calmly among the engineers, offering guidance and helping wherever he could. He did not boast or draw attention, but his presence alone seemed to inspire the workers. Machines that had jammed for days ran smoothly under his observation. His understanding of the station, of its systems and flow, was uncanny. Ryla observed him from a distance, careful not to draw attention to herself. She noted the way his hands moved over controls, how his eyes scanned monitors, and how quickly he responded to any problem. It was not strength alone she admired. It was his focus, his clarity under pressure, his ability to see solutions that others missed. A sudden alert interrupted her thoughts. The tactical sensors had detected multiple ships moving at high speed, much larger than the first intruders. This fleet was not coming for a minor skirmish. It was an attack, a coordinated strike aimed at the Citadel. The leadership moved quickly, issuing orders to stations across the massive structure. "Commander Ryla," one officer called, "prepare your team for standard defensive procedures. Shields, drones, countermeasures, nothing unexpected." Ryla nodded, but her attention was elsewhere. Evan was already moving toward the tactical center, calm and measured. She followed him silently, watching as he studied the incoming ship's positions. His brow furrowed slightly as he calculated trajectories and estimated distances. "Commander," Evan said, his voice calm, "if we focus the shield arrays here and position the defense drones along this corridor, we can force their ships into a narrow path. They will have limited maneuverability, and we can neutralize most of them without major damage to the station." The officers looked at him in disbelief. A human was suggesting tactical positions for a large-scale fleet attack. Yet when they ran his calculations through the station's systems, every suggestion made sense. Ryla felt a shiver of anticipation. This was no ordinary human. This was someone who could think faster and more effectively than trained officers, someone who could anticipate enemy moves before they happened. The fleet entered the sector with speed, their weapons glowing as they prepared to fire. Explosions lit the outer hull as the Citadel's shields absorbed the initial impact. Panic began to ripple through the crew. The senior officers barked orders, but confusion slowed the response. Evan moved quickly, directing small teams to reinforce weak points, repair damaged systems, and ensure the flow of power remained steady. His calm presence steadied the nervous crew. Where others saw chaos, he saw opportunity. Where others hesitated, he acted decisively. Then came the first real disaster. A reactor corridor near the docking bays collapsed under the force of an enemy missile. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and several engineers were trapped in the wreckage. Officers debated whether to send teams in immediately or wait for the structure to stabilize. Evan did not hesitate. He ran toward the danger, ignoring orders to stay back. Ryla followed, her heart pounding as she watched him approach the unstable section. Without hesitation, he lifted heavy debris, creating a path for the engineers to escape. His movements were precise, calculated, and fast. He acted without panic, relying on instinct and strength combined in a way that seemed impossible. The engineers scrambled out, their eyes wide with amazement. Some could barely believe what they had seen. The officers who had doubted him before now stared in silence. When the situation stabilized, the fleet retreated slightly, regrouping for another strike. The council gathered, their faces serious. "Commander Ryla," one of them said, "are you certain about this human? We have seen him act, yes, but he is not a soldier. He is a technician, a visitor. Surely you exaggerate." Ryla shook her head firmly. "I do not exaggerate. He is dangerous. Not to us, but to anyone who threatens the Citadel. He has instincts, strength, and judgment beyond any species I have observed. I warn you, we cannot underestimate him." Some council members murmured disagreement. They valued rules, protocol, and history. Humans were unknown, untested in large-scale space combat. They believed bravery alone could not match military training. But Ryla was undeterred. She knew what she had seen. Humans adapted, survived, and acted in ways that defied expectation. Evan Hale was no ordinary human. He had already proven it once, and she sensed that the real test was still to come. The second wave of attacks arrived sooner than expected. The fleet had brought heavier ships, equipped with devices designed to disable shields and destroy structural integrity. Explosions shook the Citadel, and fires spread along damaged corridors. Crew members worked frantically to contain the damage, but it seemed overwhelming. Ryla watched as Evan coordinated efforts with precision. He did not panic, did not shout, and did not pause. He moved through chaos with an almost uncanny awareness, directing repairs, positioning defense drones, and keeping civilians out of harm's way. At one point, a powerful energy blast threatened to tear through a main corridor. Officers hesitated, unsure if it was safe to act. Evan ran into the corridor, analyzed the trajectory of the energy, and manipulated the environment to divert it. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the blast missed by inches. Ryla followed, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and admiration. Humans were supposed to be weaker, slower, less capable. Yet here was one who acted decisively, effectively, and without hesitation. He was more dangerous than any trained soldier, but only to those who threatened the lives of others. After hours of struggle, the fleet retreated again. Damage assessments were grim, but the Citadel had survived. Injuries were minimal thanks to Evan's guidance and actions. The officers who had doubted him before now regarded him with cautious respect. Ryla finally allowed herself a moment of reflection. She had suspected humans were exceptional, but now she had proof. This one human had changed the outcome of an attack that could have destroyed the station. His strength was not just physical. It was his courage, his intelligence, and his ability to inspire and lead in ways that other species could not. That night, she found Evan alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. He seemed calm, almost indifferent to the chaos he had just faced. "You were incredible today," Ryla said softly. "I did not think a single human could change so much so quickly." Evan looked at her, his expression calm. "I do not know if I am incredible. I know only what must be done. If people are in danger, I act. That is all I can do." Ryla nodded, understanding more than she expected. Humans were not motivated by pride, status, or fear. They acted because it was necessary, because they could not ignore the need to protect others. That was why they were dangerous, not reckless, but unstoppable when it mattered most. The next few days were filled with repair, preparation, and tension. Scouts reported that the fleet was regrouping, planning another attack. Ryla knew it would be larger and more organized. She also knew that the Citadel leadership still underestimated Evan, still believed that one human could not make a significant difference in the grand scope of space warfare. Ryla made a decision. She would continue to observe, to guide, and to learn from him. She would ensure the human was ready for whatever came next. The fleet's next attack would be decisive, and the Citadel's survival might depend entirely on him. She began studying the history of human conflicts quietly. She discovered that humans had survived countless disasters, wars, and harsh conditions on Earth and other colonies. They were adaptable, resilient, and persistent. Ryla realized that Evan's abilities were not unique among humans. They were a reflection of the species itself. A species that survived because it refused to fail. A species that thrived against impossible odds. The Citadel's crew continued their routines, unaware of the depth of the human's capability. Some officers still joked quietly, dismissing the warnings, while others began to whisper about his uncanny instincts and rapid decision-making. Ryla, however, remained vigilant. She knew the true test was still ahead, and she would not allow the Citadel to underestimate the danger, both the danger Evan posed and the danger he prevented. Then came the final prelude to the next attack. Scouts detected a small craft approaching the docking bay, moving faster than any standard shuttle. It was likely a scout for the fleet, testing defenses, probing weaknesses. While officers debated the proper response, Evan acted. He directed security drones to intercept the craft, calculated its trajectory, and positioned barriers to prevent damage to the station. The craft attempted to breach the bay, but Evan's interventions were perfect. The small ship was caught, neutralized, and forced to retreat without causing harm. Crew members cheered quietly, astonished at the human's foresight and quick action. Ryla stood back, her heart heavy with anticipation and relief. The fleet would attack again, this time with full force. But Evan had proven once more that humans were dangerous in ways the Citadel could not ignore. He was not reckless, nor was he motivated by pride. He was dangerous because he refused to allow failure when lives were at stake. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the observation deck, Ryla realized she had a choice. She could continue to watch him with suspicion, or she could learn from him and prepare for the coming battle. She chose the latter. The human had already shown his strength, and soon the fleet would test the Citadel in ways that would push every species to its limit. Evan did not speak of glory or reward. He prepared quietly, observing systems, calculating possibilities, and guiding crews. Ryla observed him, taking careful notes, learning what she could. Humans, she realized, were not just survivors. They were catalysts, capable of changing the outcome of events in ways no other species could predict. And as she watched him, Ryla understood the truth fully. Humans were dangerous. Not because they sought power, not because they sought war, but because they protected others, adapted, and acted decisively in the face of impossible odds. The real battle was coming, and the Citadel's survival depended on understanding the human fully. Ryla felt a thrill of fear and anticipation. She had only begun to understand what Evan Hale could do, and the galaxy would see very soon the full measure of his strength. The Citadel had survived the initial attacks, but the damage was visible everywhere. Corridors bore scorch marks from energy blasts, hull plating had been replaced in places, and engineers moved tirelessly, repairing and reinforcing systems. Commander Ryla walked through the station, her eyes scanning every detail, yet her thoughts were on Evan Hale. She could see now that he was not just strong, he was something the other species did not yet understand. Evan worked quietly without fanfare. He moved through corridors, checking systems, offering advice, and sometimes lifting equipment that 2 or 3 aliens would struggle to handle. He did not boast, did not seek attention, and did not need praise. His calm, focused presence drew people toward him, inspired them to do better, and made them feel safe even in the face of danger. Ryla had begun to study humans in secret. She learned of their history, of countless battles on Earth, harsh worlds, and unforgiving environments where survival required ingenuity, teamwork, and endurance. She read stories of how humans had survived disasters that would have wiped out entire colonies of stronger, faster, or larger species. It became clear to her that Evan's abilities were not an accident. They were the product of his species. Humans survived not by power alone, but by adaptability, courage, and relentless determination. The fleet, however, had not given up. Scouts reported that the enemy had returned, regrouping in a nearby system. Intelligence suggested that the pirates were preparing a coordinated strike, bringing heavier ships, advanced weaponry, and new tactics designed to breach the Citadel's defenses. The station buzzed with tension. Officers reviewed strategies, but Ryla knew that traditional approaches alone would not be enough. Evan moved among the teams, studying sensor reports and evaluating defenses. He asked questions no one else thought to ask, noted small weaknesses in shield alignment, and suggested subtle adjustments that would improve the station's resilience. His calculations were precise, yet there was a fluidity to his thinking that no algorithm could match. Ryla observed him quietly. She had followed humans before, studied their history, but she had never seen one like this. He was not trying to dominate or intimidate. He was simply responding to the needs of the moment, analyzing, predicting, and acting faster than anyone else could. One day, a senior officer approached Ryla, raising a segmented eye. "Commander, are you certain about this human? We have seen his actions, yes, but he is untrained. Surely he cannot match our military protocols." Ryla shook her head. "You underestimate him. His strength is not just physical. His mind, his instincts, his ability to act under pressure, these make him far more effective than any protocol alone. He has proven himself once, and he will prove it again. Trust me." That night, Ryla found herself at the observation deck, watching the stars. Evan was there as well, silent, his eyes fixed on the distant void. There was a calm intensity to him, a quiet readiness. Ryla realized that humans did not measure danger the same way other species did. They did not shrink from it. They faced it, assessed it, and acted decisively. That was why they were dangerous, because they refused to fail when others depended on them. The fleet's next attack arrived with unexpected speed. Ships of all sizes appeared in the sector, equipped with new energy weapons capable of bypassing some of the Citadel's defenses. Alarms blared, and officers scrambled to respond. Panic spread in some sections, but Evan moved as if he had anticipated this moment all along. He quickly analyzed the fleet's movements, predicting patterns that the station's AI systems struggled to compute. He suggested repositioning drones, adjusting shield frequencies, and rerouting energy to weak points. The officers followed his guidance hesitantly at first, but as the results became clear, they began to trust his judgment. During the attack, a massive strike hit one of the outer hull sections. Fires broke out, and several engineers were trapped. Without hesitation, Evan ran into the burning corridor. Sparks flew around him, heat radiated off the walls, but he moved with purpose. He lifted heavy debris, cleared the path, and guided the engineers to safety. Each movement was precise, calculated, and effective. He did not panic, he did not hesitate, and he did not falter. Ryla watched from a distance, her chest tight with a mixture of fear and admiration. Humans were supposed to be smaller, weaker, and slower than most species in the Citadel. Yet here was one human, acting decisively, saving lives, and influencing the outcome of a battle that could have been catastrophic. The pirate fleet retaliated with a new tactic. A device designed to disable shields and energy barriers was deployed near the Citadel's perimeter. The station's sensors struggled to counter it, and panic spread among the officers. Without shielding, the hull would be vulnerable to even minor attacks. Evan stepped forward calmly. He studied the device's energy signature, its pulse pattern, and the way it interacted with the station's shields. Then he acted. Using simple but effective methods, he redirected energy flows, modified the frequency of the shields, and neutralized the device's effect. Sparks and light danced around him, but the station's defenses remained intact. Ryla approached cautiously. "How did you do that?" she asked, genuinely curious. Evan did not look at her. "I observed, I calculated, I acted. That is all I know." Ryla realized again that humans were different. They did not rely solely on technology or brute strength. They relied on intuition, adaptability, and a willingness to act when others hesitated. That made them unpredictable and dangerous. The battle raged for hours. Evan coordinated teams, guided drones, and even personally disabled weaponry from the attacking ships when they breached certain perimeters. His movements were swift and precise. He did not aim to kill unnecessarily, only to neutralize threats and protect the station. Ryla saw the reactions of other species. Some were in awe, some were confused, and some began to whisper that perhaps humans had been underestimated all along. Ryla herself knew the truth. This human was extraordinary, not because he sought power, but because he refused to allow others to be harmed. After the fleet retreated, the Citadel was damaged, but intact. The engineers worked tirelessly, restoring systems and repairing hull breaches. Officers debriefed, reviewing strategies and outcomes. And through it all, Evan continued to assist quietly, never seeking credit or praise. Ryla approached him again. "You have done more than anyone expected. The fleet underestimated you, but we cannot afford to do the same. Tell me, how do you prepare for what comes next?" Evan shrugged slightly. "I do not prepare the way you think. I observe, I learn, I act. That is how humans survive. We face challenges, and we adapt. That is all we know." Ryla nodded slowly. She realized that this was more than just one human's skill. It was the strength of an entire species. Humans had survived impossible odds, fought wars with stronger opponents, and endured conditions that would have destroyed other civilizations. Evan was simply the embodiment of that resilience, that courage, that relentless determination. In the days that followed, Ryla continued her observations. She studied how Evan interacted with the Citadel, how he solved problems, and how he inspired others. She noticed subtle patterns, the way he stayed calm under stress, how he anticipated potential dangers, and how he encouraged others to act without hesitation. Humans did not rely solely on themselves. They elevated those around them. A new challenge arose when scouts reported another fleet approaching. This time, the enemy brought massive ships, coordinated attacks, and experimental technology designed to overwhelm the Citadel's defenses. Panic spread quickly. Officers debated the best response, but fear slowed their decision-making. Evan stepped forward again, calmly analyzing the situation. He suggested defensive formations, optimal positions for drones, and ways to channel the enemy into predictable paths. His guidance was simple, yet brilliant, relying on both observation and instinct. When the attack began, chaos erupted. Ships fired energy beams, missiles streaked through corridors, and alarms screamed across the station. Engineers scrambled, shields fluctuated, and officers shouted orders. Amid the chaos, Evan moved with calm precision. He directed repairs, neutralized threats, and ensured civilians remained safe. At one point, a massive blast threatened the main power conduit. Officers hesitated, unsure if it was safe to act. Evan ran straight into the danger, calculated the trajectory of the blast, and redirected energy flows, preventing a catastrophic failure. Sparks flew around him, but the station remained operational. Ryla watched, her mind racing. Humans were supposed to be fragile, limited, and predictable. Evan defied every expectation. He was dangerous not because he sought combat or glory, but because he refused to allow harm to come to others. His strength lay in courage, intelligence, and adaptability, all qualities that no protocol, no algorithm, and no training could replicate fully. After the battle, the Citadel was battered but intact. Injuries were minimal, thanks to Evan's actions and guidance. Officers who had doubted him now looked at him with a mixture of awe and respect. Ryla realized that the Citadel had witnessed something unprecedented, the full measure of a human's potential. That evening, Ryla and Evan stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The Citadel was alive with repairs and preparation, but outside the void remained silent, vast, and full of unseen dangers. "You have changed the way I see humans," Ryla said softly. "I underestimated your species before, but now I understand. You are more than I expected." Evan looked at her calmly. "Humans survive. We protect, that is all. We do not seek power. We do what is necessary. That is why we endure." Ryla nodded. She knew the truth now. Humans were dangerous not because they sought conquest, not because they craved strength, but because they acted decisively in the face of danger, protected those who could not protect themselves, and adapted to survive impossible odds. The fleet would return, and the Citadel would face greater challenges. But Ryla had no doubt that Evan and the humans could meet them. Their strength was not just physical, it was the strength of character, courage, and an unwavering refusal to allow failure. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Ryla felt a mixture of fear, respect, and anticipation. The next battle would test everyone, but she knew one thing with certainty: humans were dangerous. And when they acted, the galaxy would feel the full force of their power. The Citadel was tense. Weeks of preparation had passed since the last attack, and every officer, engineer, and crew member was on high alert. Sensors monitored every corner of the surrounding space. Scouts reported the fleet approaching, larger and more organized than before. It was clear that this time, the attackers intended to destroy the station entirely. Commander Ryla moved through the corridors, her eyes scanning the activity, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. The Citadel was home to thousands of beings, and the fleet's advanced ships and experimental weapons could easily tear it apart. She knew the officers would follow protocol, but protocols alone would not save the station. Only one factor could tip the balance: Evan Hale. Evan walked calmly among the preparations. He inspected the drones, checked the shields, and gave quiet advice to teams running simulations. He did not shout, did not panic, and did not seek attention. His presence alone inspired confidence. The crew moved efficiently, following his guidance without hesitation, because even in chaos, he had a way of making clarity emerge from confusion. Ryla watched him, her thoughts heavy. Humans had survived countless disasters, conflicts, and impossible odds. She had studied their history, but observing one in action was different. Evan was the living embodiment of his species' resilience, adaptability, and courage. She understood now that humans were dangerous, not because they sought dominance, but because they refused to allow failure when others depended on them. The fleet arrived sooner than expected. Massive ships, their hulls glowing with energy weapons, spread across the sector. Smaller attack crafts flitted like swarms around them, probing the Citadel's defenses. Alarms blared, and the station shook as the first energy blasts hit the shields. Officers shouted orders, drones moved to intercept, and engineers rushed to reinforce weak points. Panic threatened to spread, but Evan's calm presence held the crew together. He moved from station to station, analyzing data, adjusting tactics, and ensuring every defensive measure was optimized. A massive strike hit the outer ring, breaching a section of the station. Sparks flew and debris fell from damaged corridors. Civilians screamed and officers scrambled to contain the damage. Without hesitation, Evan ran toward the breach. His movements were swift, precise, and fearless. He lifted heavy debris blocking escape routes, guided civilians to safety, and redirected emergency power to stabilize the shields. Every action he took was measured, deliberate, and highly effective. Ryla followed, awestruck. She had witnessed humans survive impossible situations before, but this was more than survival. It was mastery under pressure. Evan was not reckless. He was decisive. He was dangerous, but only to those who threatened the lives of others. The fleet escalated their attack. A massive ship deployed a weapon capable of temporarily disabling large sections of the Citadel's shields. Panic spread among officers who had never faced such technology. The main shield generator began to falter, and alarms screamed across the station. Evan approached the generator room calmly. He analyzed the weapon's pulse, its effect on the shields, and the station's energy flow. Then he acted. He rerouted power, adjusted frequencies, and neutralized the weapon's effect. Sparks and arcs of energy surrounded him. But the shields held. Crew members watched in awe as the humans single-handedly stabilized a system that would have overwhelmed other species. "Commander," an officer said, disbelief in his voice. He just did what the system alone could not. How is that possible?" Ryla shook her head. "He is human. That is all I can say. Humans survive. They adapt. They act when others hesitate. That is why he is dangerous." As the battle raged, smaller boarding crafts attempted to breach the Citadel. The attackers sought to disable internal systems and sabotage defenses. Evan intercepted them with calm precision. He guided teams, disarmed traps, and protected civilians. His speed and strength, combined with clear judgment, made him nearly unstoppable. Where others saw chaos, he saw patterns. Where others hesitated, he acted. The fleet's commander, a massive alien with a reputation for brutality, entered the station in person, confident that the Citadel was moments from destruction. Ryla and her officers mobilized to intercept him, but it was Evan who stepped forward to face the intruder. His eyes were calm, his posture relaxed yet alert. There was no fear, only focus. The alien commander attacked, wielding advanced weapons and relying on brute strength. Evan dodged, parried, and countered with skill that seemed almost instinctual. Every move he made was efficient and precise, avoiding unnecessary harm while neutralizing the threat. Ryla watched, her heart pounding. The human was not merely surviving. He was controlling the situation, turning what should have been panic into order. The Citadel's crew followed his lead. Inspired by Evan's calm confidence, they moved with precision, repaired damage quickly, and coordinated defenses more effectively than they had before. Where chaos had ruled, strategy and purpose now prevailed. Finally, Evan faced the alien commander directly. The fight was intense, but Evan's speed, intuition, and adaptability gave him the advantage. He disarmed the intruder's weapons, neutralized his ship systems, and forced the commander to retreat. The fleet, seeing their leader defeated, began to withdraw. The Citadel had survived once again. After the battle, the station was damaged but intact. Engineers worked tirelessly to restore systems, officers debriefed, and civilians were accounted for. Throughout it all, Evan continued to assist quietly, never seeking recognition or reward. Ryla approached him once the chaos had calmed. "You have done more than anyone could have imagined," she said softly. "I doubted your kind at first, but now I understand. Humans are different. They are dangerous, yes, but not in the way anyone expected." Evan looked at her calmly. "I did what needed to be done. Humans survive. We protect. That is all." Ryla nodded. She realized the truth fully. Humans were dangerous not because they sought power or conquest, but because they acted decisively in the face of danger, protected those who could not protect themselves, and adapted to survive impossible odds. Evan had demonstrated the full measure of what humans could do. In the days after the battle, the Citadel recovered. Systems were repaired, the hull reinforced, and new defensive protocols were implemented. Officers who had doubted Evan now spoke of him with respect, even awe. Ryla documented every action, every decision, and every instance of human strength she had observed. She wrote her final report to the council, not as a warning, but as a message of respect. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were not reckless, but decisive. They were not seeking dominance, but capable of protecting countless lives against impossible odds. Evan Hale had proven that one human could change the course of events for an entire station. Standing on the observation deck, Ryla watched the stars stretch endlessly before her. Evan stood beside her, silent, watching as well. The Citadel was safe, for now, but the galaxy remained full of dangers yet unseen. "You were right," Ryla said quietly. "Humans are dangerous, and today you proved it." Evan gave a small, calm smile. "I only did what was needed. That is all any of us can do." Ryla turned her gaze back to the stars. She felt a mixture of fear, respect, and anticipation. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of extraordinary feats. They were dangerous, yes, but in the way that mattered most. They protected, they endured, and they acted when it was necessary. The Citadel had survived its greatest test, not because of technology or sheer numbers, but because one human refused to allow failure. Ryla knew that she had witnessed something rare, something extraordinary. Humans were a force that could change outcomes, shift the balance of power, and inspire hope even in the darkest times. As the lights of the Citadel glimmered, Ryla placed a hand on the railing beside her. She felt a deep sense of understanding and respect. Humans were dangerous, but not for the reasons anyone feared. They were dangerous because they refused to fail, because they faced impossible odds and acted decisively, and because they protected others even at great risk to themselves. Evan stood silently as he always did, calm, measured, and ready. The Citadel had survived, and humanity had proven its worth once again. Ryla knew that the galaxy would soon recognize what she had seen firsthand. Humans were not to be underestimated, and for the first time she felt completely certain that when the galaxy faced its next great challenge, humanity would rise to meet it, dangerous, resilient, and unstoppable. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and for the first time in her career, Commander Ryla felt a sense of awe. The human beside her was not merely a survivor, he was a protector, a strategist, and a force that could change the course of events. She had been right all along. Humans were dangerous, and now the galaxy knew why.